Praise the Lord. John 19:26 and 27.
When Jesus therefore saw his mother, the
disciples standing by whom he loved, he said unto his mother, Woman, behold thy son. Then said he to the disciple, Behold thy mother. And from that hour, that disciple took her into his own home.
As we heard her read, this word is like really two saying, one to Mary and one to John. In this third word, the third one is only recorded by the Apostle John. Whenever we look at life of Jesus, we see it was different from other lives. Often his action seems to go from extraordinary to an ordinary and back again. In Matthew 14, chapter 14, verse 13 to 21, is speaking to his disciples about a hungry crowd, and which was numbering like several thousands. He mentions their need of food. That was an ordinary assessment. Then he proceeds to feed them all from the few loaves of bread and fish. This was an extraordinary action he performed. Then even next is Mark 4:35 to 41. We see he travels travels across to the Sea of Galilee, where we see him he's asleep when he was tired. That was an ordinary action, and then he stands up and calms down the storm. That was an extraordinary action. Here also, the last word we heard that he said to the dying criminal that he will enter paradise. That was an extraordinary word of authority and comfort. Then he follows it by a ordinary request that to John, saying, take care of my mother. We see in every single circumstances he was different. You're probably wondering why he told that to John. In Bible, many times there has been mentioned that many women followed around him. Even in Luke 23:49, can please somebody read that?
அவருக்கு அறிமுகமா
And all his acquaintances and the woman that followed him from Galilee stood afar off, beholding these things.
In here we see that it is mentioned that woman followed him. This could be like interpreted as his mother Mary also was in that crowd. If that is the case, she must have experienced weeks of high and low, pleasant and unpleasant moments with his son, where she could have seen Jesus being respected, admired, but perplexing occasions where he was abused and hated. And when seeing all this, she could have gone back to the saying of Gabriel, where it is like Luke chapter 1, verse 26 to 33, where it is like said by angel Gabriel about the greatness of his kingdom of son. But all that was, whatever she was seeing is like straight opposite to what the angel Gabriel told. But that was only on the surface meaning. But if we see the God's intention of this work, its main work was work of salvation. That was really going well. And when we see further, even in Psalms chapter 22, it's called Messiah Psalm, where Jesus also refers to his mother like 2 times from verse 9 to 10, where he says, you are at my mother's breast, and he says, from my mother's womb. So he mentions and gives importance to his mother, and this word can be also taken as an affectionate term. So when Jesus calls Mary woman, it could be possible for us to regard it as a term being endearment because it was not the way we speak to our parents, but that is merely a cultural practice. When Jesus uses title of his mom, he was not indicating distance but loving respect. A good translation would be dear woman. We can see a similar way of speaking by him to Mary in John chapter 2 and verse 4 in the account of wedding of in Cana. It also provides a word of new direction. We can see that Jesus tells that she relates to her in a different way. We can see that in Luke chapter 8 verse 21.
And he answered and said unto them, My mother and my brethren are these which hear the word of God and do it.
So here he says that my mothers and my brothers are those who hear the word and do it. So we have to ask ourselves this question: are we doing what he taught us or told us to do? So we could be also that well-privileged people to be a brother or mother to him. Mary would also relate to Jesus as a family member of, as a family of God, and not only as his mother. Many times we can see that Jesus tells us that his family is not looking after their brother because he was not accepted in that region, and he gave this post like to take care of his mother mother Mary to John. This was a high honor to John. Jesus entrusted him to take care of Mary. This is a reminder that Jesus knows our character. Earlier in the Gospel, John refers to those whom Jesus would not commit himself or entrust him. John first recorded act after the death of Jesus was the occasion when he and Peter went to empty tomb. After discovering that it was empty, they went to their own homes. What a message John had for Mary that day. Her son is alive, he is risen from the dead, no longer apparent victim. So this was the place where he showed the fellowship between John and Mary was very sweet. We can all ask ourselves this question: what is the best way of becoming a spiritual helper to others? The answer must be obvious. The person with the strongest spiritual hand will be the one who learns most from the breast of Jesus. And in John 21:20, it says, it tells us that John was often found on the breast of Jesus. A heart occupied with Jesus will always have a ready hand to serve Jesus. And last but not least, Jesus obeyed the fifth commandment. We know that there is 10 commandments. In that fifth commandment is honor your parents. So he also fulfilled that. In this way, we can say that Jesus is really perfect in the way he lived. This is because he needed to have a perfect life in order to be accepted by God as a sacrifice of sin. Whenever we look at life of Jesus, we see something attractive and beautiful. Often his obedience is presented through one of God's commandments. On the cross, he displayed this beautiful obedience in a number of ways. He showed his love by praying to God to forgive his soldiers. He also showed love to sinners by praying for the soldiers and forgiving the penitent criminal. And he also showed his love to God and his law by honoring his mother. Truly, the law of God was in his heart. And this is a challenge for those who have elderly parents. One's responsibility for them lasts as long as they live. Jesus has left us an example of following his footsteps. He ensured that his mother would have ideal physical and spiritual care after he has gone. His own suffering did not relieve him of that duty, and out of love of his father. law and his own mother, he took care of her. Although he was on the cross, he was engaged in the work that he would redeem his people. He found the time to provide for his mother.